Hello, and welcome to our project. Let me begin by asking each of you a question. If you were to give yourself a letter grade on your commitment to safety, A through F, what would that be? Now remember that grade, and we will ask you to reevaluate that answer at the conclusion of this presentation. All in. All in is a philosophy that makes the well-being of all workers on our job sites a priority in everything we do. 24/7, on every project, with every activity, by eliminating unnecessary risk and planning for known and unavoidable risk. The philosophy requires a positive safety culture and commitment by all workers on our projects to be all in all the time. Just like a poker game, when you have a winning hand, you put all your chips in on that hand. We are asking every worker on White's Company projects to be all in when it comes to safety on and off our projects. The characteristics that define an all-in project are as follows. All employees embrace the idea of owning the zone of work immediately surrounding their work area. Empowering employees to stop work and ask questions when something does not look right. Chances are it isn't. Providing positive recognitions when employees go above and beyond. Holding employees accountable, unfortunately, when they need it. Knowing you perform to the best of your ability. Sacrificing individual performance over team performance. We are prepared for the task at hand, physically, mentally, with the right tools and equipment. Supporting and abiding by work rules, policies, and regulations. The following video will discuss some of the White's Company's basic safety requirements that will contribute to your overall all-in performance. Feel free to answer the quiz questions as you follow along.
This is the White's Company's safety orientation. It will introduce you to our most important safety rules and procedures. However, this is only an orientation. Job site hazards and conditions will require additional training. Personal protective equipment. Proper personal protective equipment is required to be worn by all workers at all times. Basic requirements for personal protective equipment on White's projects include appropriate work pants. Shorts, sweatpants, and wind pants are not allowed on White's projects. Shirts with at least a 4-inch sleeve. Tank tops and cut-off sleeves are not to be worn. High visibility clothing or vest. A Type 1 Class E hard hat to protect your head from impact. Safety glasses meeting ANSI Z87.1 that are the right tint for your work conditions. Work boots, including steel-toe boots on industrial projects. Tennis shoes are not allowed on White's projects. A full face shield is required for all wheeled tools and is to be worn with a hard hat. Additional personal protective equipment needs such as hearing protection, respirators, metatarsal guards, and gloves are to be identified through the WHAT pre-task plan. The use of radios, including personal radios or headphones, is prohibited on the project site other than two-way radios for job site communication. Planning. Work cannot be completed safely unless it is properly planned. Subcontractors are required to submit a JSA for approval to the White's project team for all high-hazard scopes of work. The JSA is to be reviewed by all workers engaged in the operation. The WHAT pre-task plan is used by White's employees and subcontractors to plan the precautions necessary to complete their tasks safely. The WHAT pre-task plan is to be completed prior to each new task. The WHAT pre-task plan requires us to ask the following questions. What is the worst thing that can happen with this task? Hazards I need to control or eliminate for this task. Actions I will take to keep me safe. Tools I need to do this task safely. Housekeeping. Poor housekeeping causes trips, falls, and creates fire hazards. Poor housekeeping is unprofessional. Good housekeeping is critical to having a safe and healthy job site. It makes work more efficient and is the sign of a great project team. Housekeeping is to take place throughout the day. Each subcontractor is responsible for maintaining their work area. Electrical. All extension cords and devices must be 3-wire type and rated for hard or extra hard outdoor construction use. Extension cords must be grounded. If defects like cuts in the insulation or missing ground plugs are found, remove the cord from service. Power strips and other devices approved only for indoor use shall not be used on the construction site. All electric tools and equipment must be used with a ground fault circuit interrupter. A GFCI protects you from line-to-ground faults. Test the GFCI daily. It can save your life. Energized electrical work will be performed on White's projects only when interruption of power to an existing facility would create a life safety issue. Energized electrical work can be approved only by the Executive Vice President for each location. All testing of energized electrical parts will be done as per the requirements of NFPA 70E. Fall protection. Falls are the #1 cause of construction fatalities. Fall protection is required at 6 feet on White's projects without exception. Before putting on and using personal fall protection, visually inspect the harness and lanyard. If the harness has any tears, cuts, or burns that reduce its strength, cut it up. Lanyards with rips, tears, or non-functioning snap hooks may have been used in a fall and should also be destroyed. Retractable lanyards will limit your free fall distance to 2 feet or less. However, they must be connected directly over your work area or directly behind you. When you move sideways away from the overhead anchor point, a swing fall hazard is created. Improper extension with the cable parallel to the work surface will make the fall even more hazardous. Never attach a self-retracting lifeline to a shock-absorbing lanyard hook to hook. The shock absorber may cause the retractable to release. Always connect the retractable lanyard directly to your harness D-ring. Controlled decking zones and controlled access zones are not allowed on White's projects. When working on a roof or other surface with an exposed edge, a warning line will be erected. Workers between the warning line and exposed edge are required to use 100% tie-off. If a warning line is not feasible, 100% tie-off is required. Floor holes and openings create a double fall hazard. Hole covers are required to protect everyone from trips, falls, and falling materials. Hole covers must be capable of supporting 2 times the maximum intended load, secured, and clearly labeled hole. Trenching. Trenches and excavations create potential hazards for everyone entering and working in them. The weight of collapsing soil will trap and suffocate even the strongest person. The competent person for each trench or excavation, regardless of depth, is required to complete the daily dig permit. The daily dig permit is to be reviewed by the White's project team prior to work starting. Any trench or excavation with the potential to collapse is to be protected. OSHA requires cave-in protection be used for all trenches 5 feet or deeper. Sloping, shoring, trench shields, and trench boxes are to be used as per the OSHA and manufacturer's standards. The competent person for the trench or excavation is to use the White's Excel spreadsheet, which is to be used to determine cave-in protection methods for all trenches 5 feet or deeper. All trenches and excavations greater than 4 feet in depth require ramps, ladders, or stairs for access. Travel distance to an access point is not to exceed 25 feet. If excavations are left open at the end of the day, they must be flagged or barricaded. Ladders. Ladders must be in good condition and inspected before each use for defects such as missing parts, cracked rungs, rail damage, and footpads. Only Type 1 or 1A fiberglass ladders with a minimum duty rating of 250 pounds are to be used. Aluminum ladders are not to be used on White's projects. Extension ladders are to be set up at a 4-to-1 angle. Extend the ladder at least 3 feet above the working surface. Secure ladders from being displaced while in use with rope, wire, blocking, or other methods. Use 3 points of contact while climbing a ladder. Self-supporting stepladders must be fully extended with spreaders locked. Always work facing the stepladder. Do not stand on the top or second from the top rungs of a stepladder. Your center of gravity is to remain within the side rails when working from a stepladder. When setting up ladders near leading edges where users can fall over a handrail, fall protection must be used. Scaffold. Scaffold must be erected, moved, dismantled, or altered only under the supervision of a competent person. An OSHA competent person is one who has a thorough understanding of the standards governing the work activity, is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards, and can take prompt corrective action. Scaffold work is performed only by trained and experienced persons selected by the competent person. Before a scaffold can be placed into service, it must be properly tagged by the competent person. The scaffold tag communicates to the scaffold users the condition of the scaffold. The tag must be signed by the competent person and installed at or near the entranceway. A green tag indicates the scaffold is complete and ready for use. A yellow tag indicates the scaffold is complete, but users will need to use fall protection. A red tag is used on a scaffold which is incomplete or has a safety deficiency. All scaffold bases shall be in accordance with the OSHA standards. Scaffolds shall be fully cross-braced below the working level. All working levels on a scaffold shall be fully planked. Handrails and toe boards will be installed on open sides and ends of all scaffolds higher than 6 feet. Proper access is to be provided for accessing scaffolds. The White's Company requires that workers use fall protection during the erection and dismantling of scaffolds without exception. All enclosed scaffolds shall be tied back to prevent overturning as per the scaffold manufacturer's requirements. In many cases, an engineer will be required to determine the tie-back method. Power tools. Power tools and equipment shall only be operated with working guards and handles in place. Guards and handles are not to be removed from power tools under any circumstances. Inspect tools for damage. Unsafe and broken tools shall be tagged, "Do not use." Check the label on all tools and equipment. Those requiring grounding must have ground plugs. Tools designed to be double insulated have the double square on the label. Mobile equipment. Only properly trained and authorized workers are allowed to operate equipment on White's projects. Documentation of training is to be submitted to the White's project team. Equipment operators are required to complete a documented inspection of their equipment prior to operation. Seat belts are to be worn at all times. Fall protection is required when working from an aerial lift or forklift basket. Additional procedures. Safety data sheets must be present for all chemicals used or stored on the project. Read and understand the information contained in the SDS for the chemicals you use. Subcontractors are responsible for submitting safety data sheets for all chemicals they bring to the project to the White's project team. Silica exposure takes place when cutting or drilling concrete. Prolonged breathing of silica dust can lead to the lung disease silicosis. Engineering controls, such as wet cutting, should be used whenever feasible to reduce or eliminate exposure to airborne silica. If a hazard still exists, workers shall wear a respirator to protect them from silica exposure. Gasoline must be stored in self-sealing safety cans only. Non-safety cans do not self-close and will spill. Plastic gas cans are not to be used on White's projects. Welding and hot work always require a dedicated fire extinguisher, fire watch, and hot work permit from the White's project team. Inspect the area before starting and remove any flammable or combustible materials. The White's project team has the authority to warn, suspend, and remove from the project any worker for failure to follow safety rules. A willful fall protection, trenching, or electrical violation will result in termination without warning. Reporting for work under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or the consumption of them during the workday or on White's company job sites, will be grounds for termination. The sale, manufacture, distribution, possession, or use of drugs and other controlled substances is absolutely prohibited. The White's company is committed to providing a drug-free workplace for its employees and subcontractors. All injuries have a cause and can be prevented. However, despite our best efforts, injuries can still occur. We must be prepared to respond quickly to injuries and incidents. Ensure the accident scene is safe and secure before attempting a rescue or providing first aid to a coworker. In the event of a serious or life-threatening injury, fire, or other event, call the emergency phone number posted for your job site. In most cases, you will call 911. All injuries and accidents must be reported immediately to the project superintendent. Quick reporting of injuries will ensure that proper medical treatment is received. Each job site must have emergency processes and procedures in place. An investigation will ensure corrective actions are taken. Reporting injuries and incidents will prevent them from being repeated. This concludes the video portion of your safety orientation. Complete the sign-up sheet, apply the verification sticker to your hard hat, ask about additional hazards. Thank you, and welcome to the White's Company.
This project is enrolled in a CCIP. So what is a CCIP? A CCIP is a contractor-controlled insurance program, commonly known as a wrap-up. It is a centralized insurance program that White's purchased and covers the insurance, work comp insurance, for all workers on the project, subcontractors included. All injuries and incidences shall be reported to the White's project team immediately, no exceptions. White's will investigate all injuries and incidents and assist with medical care and claims management. All incidents and injuries will be required to fill out the necessary paperwork within the injury kit. Workers whom injuries do not require emergency medical treatment will be taken by a company representative to the CCIP-approved medical provider unless the state allows otherwise. Failure to report will result in disciplinary action. All companies working on site will be enrolled in the CCIP program before beginning any work on site. This includes any sub-tier subcontractors as well. Check with the White's project team before mobilizing to ensure your enrollment has been complete. Some special requirements the insurer requires of CCIPs are as follows. Subcontractors agree to participate in the project behavior-based safety program, which includes training and observations. Safety pre-construction meetings will be conducted with the subcontractor's direct and lower tier subcontractor's supervision prior to working on site. Subcontractor must be pre-qualified by contractor to work on the project. All work 6 feet or more above a lower level requires 100% fall protection, no exceptions. This includes but is not limited to guardrails, safety nets, or personal fall arrest systems. Only a full body harness with a shock-absorbing lanyard or self-retracting lifeline shall be used. Anchorage points shall be capable of supporting at least 5,000 pounds per worker attached to the anchorage. Safety monitors for elevated work, such as roofing, are not permitted. Subcontractor shall develop, maintain, and comply with a project safety plan. Contractor reserves the right to remove any unsafe equipment, tools, or unsafe items from the project at any time. The White's Company reserves the right to remove any person from the project site for any reason. Subcontractors shall use the WHAT pre-task planning process and JSA for high-risk activities. The project site is fenced, and security provisions such as badging, sign in and out, and hard hat stickers may be implemented on your project. The subcontractor shall provide a full-time safety rep for up to 50 workers for which the subcontractor is responsible. This includes subcontractor employees and workers for all their lower tier subcontractors and an additional full-time safety person for every 100 workers thereafter. 100% compliance for hard hat, safety glasses, sturdy work boots, and high visibility shirts or vest is required. Only qualified electricians shall perform electrical work including repairs to extension cords and/or power tools. Working on or near exposed energized parts is prohibited. All portable electrical tools must be protected by GFCIs. All subcontractor direct and lower tier subcontractors must have OSHA 10-hour construction training within the previous 3 years or the extended safety orientation training if provided by the contractor on the project site. If you are watching this video, chances are you have been afforded the extended safety orientation instead of the 10-hour requirement. All subcontractor direct and lower tier subcontractor supervisors must complete an OSHA 30-hour construction safety course. The Whites Company reserves the right to require and conduct any safety training as deemed necessary for subcontractors direct and lower subcontractor workers. Participation in mandatory safety orientation for all subcontractors, direct and lower tier subcontractor workers conducted by contractor. Mandatory return to work when employees are injured and they do not return to work or employer decides not to bring them back to work, there is a fine structure put in place contractually. Subcontractor shall provide a full-time first aid and CPR trained person for every 10 direct and lower tier subcontractor workers. Daily dig permit is required for all excavations. All crane operations require a daily lift plan. Smoking is permitted only in designated areas. All accidents, incidents, and near misses must be immediately reported to the Whites Company. Subcontractor participation in a stretch and flex program is required once in the morning and then again after lunch. Documented daily equipment inspections, and then a site-specific safety committee with at least one employee from each subcontractor will be required. Each subcontractor and its lower tier subcontractors is required to develop, implement, and maintain a project-specific safety and health program which addresses the hazards to which their workers are exposed. However, in no way does this program nor this agreement relieve any subcontractor or its lower tier subcontractors of their liabilities of their legal obligations to comply with any local, state, or federal laws, regulations, or requirements. Each subcontractor must submit their project safety plan and health program to the project safety manager prior to starting work on the project. The program must address the hazards associated with each scope of work and include SDSs for any chemicals products expected to be used on the project. Safety representatives for under 50 workers to be identified to the Whites project team. Resumes for potential full-time safety persons need to be submitted to the Whites project team and safety manager for approval. In the next video, we will discuss the Whites Company behavior-based safety program. Select workers will be asked to participate in. Understand that BBS does not take the place of the Whites Company policy or procedures, but is in addition to our standard operating procedures.
Welcome to Behavior-Based Safety Observer Orientation Training. This training is required for all field personnel. What is behavior-based safety? It's an approach to safety which identifies behaviors which lead to injuries. It reinforces and redirects these behaviors through observation and feedback, worker-to-worker positive feedback. It measures behaviors to predict and prevent incidents, and injuries. Behavior-based safety is not a replacement for our safety program. BBS is a way to involve you as a skilled tradesman involved in helping to make sure no one gets injured. Observations are not conducted by project managers or supervision. Let's look at the probability of being injured. The higher the probability of an accident, the more easily workers recognize the risks. When risks get too low, workers tend to overlook or fail to recognize the risk and continue to take the precaution. What if you put your hands in a set of moving gears? What's the chance of being injured? 1 on 1. And if you put one bullet in a 6-shot revolver, spin the cylinder, point it at your head, and pull the trigger, what's the probability you'll shoot yourself? 1 in 6. When you roll 2 dice, what's the chance of rolling 2 or 12? 1 in 36. What if you try to pull one certain card out of a deck without looking at the face of the cards? What's your chance of getting the right card? 1 in 52. We all recognize high probability, but do we recognize 1 in 500 or 1 in 1,000 risks? Usually not. Probability is something that hides potential accidents from workers. If the probability of an accident is high, we can learn to take precautions through our common sense. If the probability is not high enough, we usually learn of the danger through experience, and a fellow worker gets injured or we have a near miss. If the probability is not high enough, we usually learn of the danger through experience. Statistically, these low probability behaviors result in an injury 1 time in 500. Because of the low probability of injury, workers do not identify the behavior as unsafe. Majority of accidents which occur are the result of unsafe behaviors or actions, not unsafe conditions. These injuries are predominantly the result of behaviors with a low probability of causing an accident. Most construction workers have used a drill without a handle countless times through their careers without being injured. Use of a drill without a handle is a low probability hazard. Because the worker has not been previously injured by this behavior, use of a drill without a handle becomes a habit or a behavior. Therefore, use of a drill without a handle is not a lack of common sense, but rather a lack of recognition that doing so is unsafe. Have you ever used a drill without a handle? The majority of the time a person using the drill is uninjured. Whites has experienced injuries due to lack of handles on drills and grinders. Historically, 28% of injuries are the result of struck by or caught between hazards. 22% of the injuries are from improper tool selection and use. 21% of the injuries are from failure to maintain eyes on path and work. And finally, 14% of injuries are from improper body mechanics. That's a total of 85% of all injuries. If someone told you that by participating in BBS, your chances of being injured on the job are reduced by 85%, wouldn't you think that was a good thing? Let's look at the BBS process. First, an observer goes through training, and all field employees are to be trained. Observers must be encouraged to conduct observations. Observations must be turned in on the day you conduct them. Observations are reviewed to determine if there are any improvements that can be implemented. Does it work? Average injury reduction is 40% the first year and 30% the subsequent years. So let's take a look at the BBS form. This is the front of the observation checklist. An observation only takes 2 to 3 minutes. As you will notice on the checklist, the person conducting the observation writes their name in the upper left corner. The date and time, number of people being observed, work location, and day of the week are also on the checklist. Typically, the number of people being observed should only be 1 to 2 people. Trying to observe more than 2 people can be difficult. The precautions listed are struck by, caught between, tool selection and use, eyes on path and work, and body mechanics. As you may recall from a previous slide, these 4 precautions are selected because we know 85% of our injuries are a result of these 4 behaviors. When conducting an observation, you want to reinforce safe behaviors with 1 or 2 minor corrections to concerns that you may have. This is the back of the observation checklist. Let's discuss some of these samples. The first is struck by caught between, and it may mean keeping clear of power tools. The second is tool selection and use, and can mean using the appropriate ladder for the task. Eyes on path or eyes on work may mean keeping your eyes in the direction of your travel. And the final precaution is body mechanics. This can mean bending at the knees, maintaining proper posture, and keeping the load close to your body without twisting at the waist when lifting an object. And these are just samples to provide guidance as you conduct your observation. Now let's watch a coworker conduct an observation.
How you doing?
All right.
Do you mind if I do a safety observation on you?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind.
Okay, thank you very much. It'll take about 5 minutes.
All right. How was that?
That was very good. First of all, I'd like to compliment you that you had your proper PP on. You know, your high-vis vest. Just I noticed when I first came up here, housekeeping was somewhat poorly. I have a concern on a couple of those 2x4s you picked up. I noticed you had some incorrect body movement and poor lifting techniques. Can you tell me why that is?
I was kind of in a hurry. Lunch is coming up. Trying to hurry up and get down to lunch.
Okay, well, I appreciate your honesty on that. Just remember, safety above all comes first. And I appreciate you taking the time to correct the matter. And you did a real good job on that. And I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
Now let's go through the aware process. What did you notice about the observation video? The worker followed the aware process. First, he announced his intention to conduct the observation and asked for permission. Second, he watched the employee work for a couple of minutes and observed from checklist items. Next, when he had a concern, he asked his coworker why he did it that way. Fourth, he reinforced the things the employees did safely. And last, he expressed one concern regarding the body's mechanics of the individual. Now let's have some rules of observation, and we want to avoid some problems. No names and no blame. No discipline connected to these observations. We want to care, not criticize. We want to influence and not force. We want to focus on preventing accidents. We want to maintain respect. Use the words safe and concern in your terminology. Tell all the safes first, then the concerns. And don't use the words but or however in between. These things are not an observer's job. You don't want to ambush or spy on workers or catch them doing it unsafely. You don't want to criticize worker performance. You don't want to be a safety cop, so you don't want to watch the whole task or job. You don't want to force people to change or turn them in for any discipline. You don't want to identify conditions that don't directly impact critical behaviors. So what if? What if you see someone in danger or violating an important safety rule? You must stop the observation and protect the employee. The goal of BBS is to prevent accidents, so don't let one happen just because you're doing one. If you see a concern not on the checklist or someone tells you something you did not personally observe, there's a place on the checklist for this as well. If someone wants you to write a fix-up item, explain that the BBS checklist is not a work order and will not automatically result in action. Still use work orders, however, and report to supervisors for immediate needs. If a worker refuses to be observed, respect his or her wishes, but try to discuss their preference to not be observed and find out why they feel this way. There may be some misunderstanding or miscommunication that can be improved to help everyone understand that BBS is there to help and not to harm. Now let's review what we've learned. BBS observations are to be conducted by all superintendents. True or false? False. Observations are to be conducted by field employees only. BBS focuses on behaviors with a low probability of causing an accident. True. If an employee refuses to be observed, it's okay to continue the observation. True or false? False. Perhaps the employee is having a bad day, so tell them no problem and move on. When conducting an observation, it is acceptable to have 0 safes and all concerns marked. True or false? False. Observations are based on reinforcement of safe behaviors with 1 or maybe 2 concerns noted. When performing an observation, you see someone in danger or violating a safety rule, you should stop the observation and correct the employee. True or false? True. Don't let a coworker be in danger of injury. So, what's the path forward? We want to conduct 1 observation per week. Know where observation cards are located and where to turn them in. We want to provide positive feedback, which addresses 1 to 2 concerns only. We want to be courteous. Only your name as the observer is written on the observation card, so you get credit for conducting one. Observations only take less than 5 minutes. If you have questions or suggestions, please feel free to speak with a White supervisor. Thank you for your commitment.
Stretch and flex consist of 9 stretching exercises encompassing a full body stretch / warm-up once complete. This gets your body ready for the day's activities. These are to be done in a group setting, with a volunteer worker leading the group twice a day, before work begins in the morning and then directly after your lunch hour. Last year, the White's Company implemented a new program to assist workers in the prevention of soft tissue, slip and trip, and overexertion related injuries. That program is referred to Nothing Hits the Floor. The program is expected to be embraced by all workers on our projects. Thus, the next video explains the concepts and means of execution to make the program successful. Hello, welcome to the White's Company training on Nothing Hits the Floor. This tutorial will provide project teams the tools necessary to successfully implement and manage Nothing Hits the Floor on all White's Company projects. What is Nothing Hits the Floor? By definition, Nothing Hits the Floor is a practice of reducing the number of times an object is handled, be that incoming material or scrap. The goal is to reduce the amount of bending, stooping, squatting, lifting, lowering, or handling or rehandling of material and tools on our projects. The outcome, once successfully implemented, will increase safety and productivity by reducing worker fatigue and the time it takes to perform a task or cleaning. At the same time, it maintains excellent housekeeping that decreases the amount of slip and trip hazards, fire loading of the building, and maintains emergency access in and out of those structures. Why implement nothing hits the floor? Nearly 1/3 of all reportable injuries and 40% of fatalities are a direct result from slips, trips, and falls. These injuries result in 50% more days away from work than all other injuries. The average cost of a single injury related to slips, trips, and falls in construction is $30,000. Successful implementation of nothing hits the floor will aid in significantly reducing the frequency of these types of injuries by 1, reducing the number of times an object is handled, 2, reducing the number of times a worker bends, stoops, squats, lifts or lowers, or handles tools and material. The Nothing Hits the Floor program is designed to improve the job site conditions for all workers. Active discussions are in pre-con regarding workstations, waste collection, delivery, staging, and storage of materials on White's projects prior to work beginning is key to the program's success. In the next few slides, we will discuss the above in detail. Workstations. All workstations will be waist high in order to eliminate excessive bending and/or squatting down when cutting or fitting material. Workstations should be 30 to 36 inches off the ground and ideally be mobile so that they can be moved from one area to the next easily. Workstations can incorporate longer tables to keep boards being cut, metal studs, rebar, PVC pipe from falling to the ground. A trash cart can be placed at the end of the table for waste disposal. Provide a place at the workstation for tool storage when not in use, and to avoid setting tools on the ground. Second, capturing waste. This can be achieved by placing collection bins and/or rolling containers into workstations to collect scrap as it is being produced. This reduces the number of times the material is handled and decreases the number of times required for cleanup. Rolling carts and/or trash carts can be used to load scrap directly into and empty ones rotated in to replace full containers. Wire banding from packing crates and building material will be immediately disposed of by workers in the appropriate refuge container after removal. Plan for frequent daily emptying of trash cans and carts. On multi-story buildings, set up a safe loadout area or use debris chutes. Contractors are responsible for removing any trash brought in by their workers, resulting from lunch and/or breaks. Third, delivery and material staging. Bring material into the building just prior to it being needed to eliminate overstocking or congestion. Prefabricate components off-site when possible. Material and tools will be brought in on rolling carts, pallets, or skids to enable easy movement of the material around the job site. Consider safe access to dumpsters, such as using the open door policy, or have a proper step platform built up to the side of the dumpster. The fourth and final component to a successful program requires proper storage of materials. Lumber stacks shall utilize spacers or dunnage to keep the stack off the ground to allow a forklift to lift and move the lumber. During demolition, wallboard is to be cut into 4x4 sections while on the wall, removed, placed on pallets or skids for removal. Workers working with lumber with protruding nail screws will either bend the nail screws over or remove the nail screws before stacking in a pile or properly disposing into a waste recycle bin. Storage areas and tool rooms must be kept free from the accumulation of materials and debris that may cause tripping, fire, explosion, or the harboring of rats or other pests. All cords and hoses should be hung overhead. If they cannot be hung overhead, they all need to be routed out of all paths of travel. Use this slide and the following 3 as examples of best and poor material storing practices. Transportation and material handling. Use of fork trucks, dollies, carts, or other mechanical equipment should always be the first consideration when moving material or heavy objects. No worker on White's project shall manually lift more than 50 pounds individually or 150 pounds with a team lift. Steps for successful implementation. Use of these steps will aid project teams in the program's successful implementation. 1. Plan. Use pre-construction meetings to talk about schedule and logistics to maintain adherence to nothing before policy. Train. Discuss requirements of the plan with all workers during on-site orientation. 3. Mobilize. Materials are stored on dunnage or pallets to provide workers opportunity to easily move materials with pallet jacks or forklifts. 4. Collect. Centralized cutting areas are set up, and subs use dust collecting equipment and floor coverings. Subcontractors are encouraged to consider prefabrication or pre-cutting materials off-site. 5. Clean. Mobile containers and equipment collect debris where the work is being performed and are emptied into dumpsters daily. 6. Contain. Keeping cords off the floor prevents tripping hazards. 7. Stage. Lights and subs work together to minimize on-site staging of materials to less than 1 week. Once nothing hits the floor expectations are clearly spelled out in Exhibit C of our subcontracts. It is the responsibility of our employees to communicate these expectations starting at pre-con, again during pre-construction meetings, and finally during site orientations. Once expectations have been clearly communicated, our project team shall hold all contractors accountable for proper execution of its requirements. This concludes the White's Company tutorial on nothing hits the floor. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact a member of our project team or the safety department. JSAs will be completed and receive approval from project teams before any high-risk activities may take place. Examples of high-risk activities are works requiring any fault protection, exposure to hazardous chemicals, and potential overhead loads, confined space, or public protection concerns. What books are to be used for all works not considered high hazard? Workers shall fill out a new page before every new task or update current page whenever conditions or plan to complete task changes. Each book allows for the planning of 20 separate activities. All completed books need to be turned into the White's project team, at which time a new blank book will be issued. Before performing a task, ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen? Hazards you need to control or eliminate, actions you will take to control or eliminate those, and tools you need to do your task safely. All subcontractors will be responsible to maintain an updated designated operator's qualification listing. Workers' names are to be listed on the left side of the form, check marks placed in the columns workers have documented training to operate. If equipment is not listed, it may be written in. A pre-use inspection shall be done daily on all equipment. Contractors may use White's form or their own. Crane operators are required to have a certification from NCCCO or equivalent. The White's project team retains the authority to confirm if the operator is qualified based on observation of the operator's skills. The crane operators will submit copies of daily, monthly, and annual inspections for each crane on the project to the White's project team. The operators will complete the White's inspection forms or equivalent. Operators are to complete the daily lift plan prior to the start of each shift. Daily digs are required for all excavations. White's representative will have to sign off before any digging or trenching can occur. Pre-energization plans shall be completed, reviewed, and signed by all required parties before temporary power is switched over to permanent. This really applies to the site electricians. Site electricians, please consult a project team member before switching from temporary to permanent power on the project. Hot work permits are required for any temporary operation involving open flames or producing heat and/or sparks. Complete the hot work permit and review it with the craft workers involved with the operation prior to the start of work. The permit is to be posted in the immediate work area. Each operation is to have its own permit unless they are close enough within 15 feet of each other to be covered by the same fire watch. All flammables and combustibles shall be removed from the area prior to start of any hot work activity. Fire watches are required to be trained, be provided with appropriate fire extinguisher, and remain in the hot work activity area for 60 minutes after completion of the hot work. At the end of the operation or at the end of the shift, the supervisor is to survey the work area for potential fire hazards and then sign off on the permit. The permits are to be turned over to the White's project team and returned to the client or to return to the client representative at the end of the task. Completed hot work permits are to be kept by the White's project team for a minimum of 90 days. Every contractor will create airborne silica dust, will be required to submit and fill out a silica exposure prevention plan. All workers, regardless of position, company, or seniority, has the right to stop unsafe work and report any unsafe conditions. This is not just your right, this is your obligation. This concludes the narrated portion of this orientation. If you have any questions, please contact a White's Company representative for additional information. Thank you and have a safe day.